All right, welcome to the Explainer. There is a ton of buzz and, more importantly, a ton of money flowing into a corner of the energy market that's been, kind of quiet for decades: nuclear power. But we're not talking about those giant cooling towers you're probably picturing. Nope. We're talking about something new, something small, and something investors are absolutely scrambling to get a piece of. And that, right there, is the big question we're digging into today. The technology is definitely taking some huge leaps forward, but does that automatically translate into a smart investment? Or is this whole thing just a really, really high-tech gamble? Let's figure it out. So, why is everyone so excited about this now? Well, this isn't just hype. We're really looking at the beginning of what could be a massive global trend. We're talking about utilities getting ready to spend tens of billions, that's billions with a B, on brand new reactors in just the next decade. And the scale of this thing is just staggering. You've got over 80 companies all around the world in this race, all trying to grab a slice of an enormous pie. This is not some small-scale experiment. It's a full-on, global push to innovate and build a whole new generation of nuclear power. The financial stakes, they are absolutely immense. Okay, so we've established there's a huge trend going on. As an investor, you'd think, great, I should get in on that. But that's exactly where things get, well, really tricky. There's a big problem facing anyone who wants to invest directly in this nuclear revival. So what is that problem? It all boils down to this number, 3. That's it. For a market that has tens of billions of dollars on the line, there are only 3 pure-play companies in the US that you can actually invest in right now. That kind of scarcity makes this a really tough market to get into. But that bottleneck is about to break wide open. 3 new companies, and each one has a totally unique take on small-scale nuclear, are getting ready to hit the public market using something called a SPAC merger. It's basically a faster way to go public. And what that means is the whole investment landscape is about to get a whole lot more interesting and probably a lot more complicated. Okay, so let's get into it. Who are these new players trying to shake up the energy world? Each one is taking a very different road to harnessing nuclear power. And you guessed it, each comes with its own set of big promises and pretty big risks. First up, we've got Terra Innovatum. And they're not thinking big, they're thinking small. Like, really small. Their entire game plan is built around the idea of micro-sized reactors. Their solo reactor is what they call micromodular. The idea is, instead of one giant power plant for a whole region, you could have lots of these little ones powering smaller, local areas. The appeal is flexibility, for sure. But that brings up a huge question. How in the world do you provide security for dozens, maybe in hundreds of tiny nuclear reactors scattered all over the place? The security costs alone could be astronomical. All right, next up is Terrestrial Energy. And they're taking a completely different path. They're ditching one of the most fundamental parts of traditional nuclear power: water. Now, this is really the cutting edge. Instead of using water for cooling and to power the turbines, they're using molten salt. Their CEO says it's way, way more efficient. They've even been tapped for a U.S. Department of Energy pilot program. But here's the catch. Being the first is always risky. When you use a novel process, you're also navigating a regulatory minefield that could mean serious, expensive delays. And that brings us to our third and final company, Eagle Energy Metals. And their business model is, well, it's definitely unique, maybe even a little bit unconventional. So these guys are trying to play both ends of the fields. On one hand, they're developing a reactor. On the other hand, their biggest asset is a giant uranium deposit out in Oregon, which they're hoping to start mining around 2032. The idea, I guess, is to control both the fuel and the machine. But some experts are looking at this and calling it an awkward fit. I mean, designing reactors and mining uranium are 2 completely different businesses that don't really have a lot in common. So, after hearing about all this incredible innovation, it is so easy to get swept up in the excitement. But before anyone gets too carried away, it is time for a big dose of reality from the folks who actually analyze this stuff for a living. This quote from a top nuclear analyst at Bloomberg just cuts right through the hype, doesn't it? It shows you there's this really deep skepticism among experts who've seen promising new tech come and go before. They're looking at this new boom and they're asking a pretty tough question: is this time really any different? So here's the bottom line. For every single brilliant idea these companies have, there's a giant, real-world question mark hanging right over it. Molten salt sounds more efficient, yeah, but it could be way trickier to handle in the real world. Microreactors offer flexibility, but securing them could be a logistical and financial nightmare. And here is the biggest catch of all. Not one of these new reactor designs has actually been built yet in the United States. So investors are betting everything on first-of-its-kind tech, and that is the dictionary definition of high risk. So what does this all mean for you, the potential investor? How do you make sense of this puzzle, where you've got incredible promise on one side and incredible risk on the other? Well, it really all boils down to one central tension. And this right here gets to the absolute heart of the dilemma. You have a stampede of investor demand, a real hunger to get in on the ground floor of what could be the next huge thing in energy. But all that money is pouring into companies that, as of right now, do not have a single working licensed product operating in the US. It's pure, unadulterated, high-stakes speculation. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. Look, we're talking about technologies that could fundamentally change our energy future, maybe even help fight climate change. But with billions of dollars on the line and no proven products yet, you have to ask yourself, are you looking at the ground floor of the future, or are you just watching a bubble inflate, waiting to pop? That is the billion-dollar question.